He was invisible to everyone, forgotten on the streets. But when she picked up his lost ID card, the truth about who he really was changed her life forever. This is a story about the forgotten, about dignity lost and found, and about how one small act of compassion can reveal the extraordinary hiding in plain sight. His name was Richard Morrison. 73 years old. But no one on Anderson Street knew his name. To the morning commuters hurrying past, he was just another homeless man, another shadow against the brick wall of the old library building. They didn't see him. Not really. They saw the worn coat, the weathered face, the trembling hands clutching a paper cup. But they didn't see him. They didn't see the man who once was. The man who still fought, every single day, to hold on to whatever remained of his dignity. Richard had been on these streets for 8 months. 8 months since everything fell apart. Since the medical bills piled too high. Since the notices turned to evictions. Since the world he knew crumbled like old newspaper in the rain. He'd been a teacher once. History. 32 years in the classroom, shaping young minds, believing in second chances and the power of education. But life has a cruel sense of irony. When his own second chance was needed most, there was no one to offer it. Every morning, Richard would wake before dawn on his piece of cardboard behind the dumpster. He'd fold it carefully, as if making a bed still mattered. As if routine could keep him human. Then he'd walk to the public restroom 3 blocks away, wash his face with cold water, and try to remember what it felt like to have purpose. By 7 a.m., he'd be at his spot. The corner where the business district met the residential area. Where people with briefcases and lattes would pass without looking. Where spare change sometimes landed in his cup, but eye contact never did. "God bless you," he'd whisper to each person who dropped a coin. Most never heard him. Some pretended not to. But Richard kept his faith. Kept his gratitude. Because giving up those things, that would be the real death. It was a Tuesday morning when Sarah Chen's life intersected with Richard Morrison's. Sarah was 28. A nurse at Metro General Hospital, working double shifts to pay off student loans. She was tired that morning, bone tired. The kind of exhausted that makes you move through the world on autopilot, seeing but not seeing. She was rushing to catch the bus, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, when something caught her eye. A small rectangular object on the wet pavement. Waterlogged. Partially hidden under a newspaper. She almost walked past it. Almost. But something made her stop. Maybe it was her nurse's instinct, the same instinct that told her when a patient needed extra attention. The same intuition that whispered, "This matters." Sarah bent down and picked it up. An ID card. Laminated, worn at the edges. She wiped away the moisture and looked at the photo. Her breath caught. The face staring back at her was younger, cleaner, smiling. But she recognized those eyes. She'd seen those same eyes that very morning, distant, hollow, belonging to the homeless man she'd passed without a second thought. She turned the card over. Name, Richard James Morrison. And then, she saw it. A smaller card tucked behind the ID. A Medicare card. A Social Security card. And something else, a folded, protected piece of paper. She opened it carefully. It was a commendation. From the State Board of Education. For 30 years of distinguished service. Richard J. Morrison, Teacher of the Year, 1998. Sarah's hands began to shake. This wasn't just a homeless man. This was someone's teacher. Someone's mentor. This was a man who had given his life to helping others, and now he had nothing. She looked up, scanning the street. Where was he? She had to find him. She had to return these weren't just cards. This was his identity. This was proof that he mattered. Sarah missed her bus that morning. And the next one. She walked the 6 blocks around the area, looking into doorways, behind buildings, asking other homeless individuals if they knew Richard Morrison. Most shook their heads. One woman, elderly, wrapped in layers despite the warming day, finally pointed down an alley. Richard? Quiet guy. Yeah, he's usually by the old library. But I haven't seen him in a couple days. Hope he's alright. Sarah's heart dropped. A couple days. She found the spot behind the library. The cardboard was there, neatly folded. A backpack, old and torn, rested against the wall. But no Richard. She asked the librarian inside. The homeless man who sits outside. I need to find him. It's important. The librarian's expression softened. He comes in sometimes. Uses the restroom. Always very polite. But I saw an ambulance here yesterday afternoon. I think they took someone. Sarah's nursing instinct kicked into overdrive. She pulled out her phone and called Metro General's ER. She described Richard. Asked if anyone matching that description had been admitted. We have a John Doe, the receptionist said. Elderly male, found unconscious behind the library. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, pneumonia. He's in critical condition. Sarah didn't think. She ran. She found him in the ICU. Hooked up to machines, oxygen mask covering his weathered face. His breathing was shallow, labored. The monitors beeped steadily, but his vitals were weak. The attending physician looked grim. He's been on the streets too long. His body is shutting down. And we have no medical history, no contacts. He's a John Doe. If he doesn't wake up soon. Sarah stepped forward. His name is Richard Morrison. Richard James Morrison. She handed over the ID cards, the commendation, everything she'd found. The doctor took them, studying the information carefully. This helps. We can access his medical records now. But. He paused. He's still critical. The next 24 hours will tell us everything. Sarah pulled up a chair beside Richard's bed. She didn't know why. She had her own shift to work. Her own life waiting. But something kept her there. She took his frail hand in hers, the same hand that had once held chalk, written lessons, guided students. The hand that had held a paper cup on the street corner. Mr. Morrison, she whispered. I found your ID. I know who you are. You're not invisible. You're not forgotten. You're a teacher. You helped so many people. And now it's someone's turn to help you. Hours passed. Sarah sat vigil. She read his commendation aloud. Talked to him about his career, about the students who must remember him, about the difference he'd made. Nurses came and went. The machines beeped on. Night fell outside the hospital windows. And then, in the quiet darkness of 3 a.m., Richard's fingers moved. Sarah's eyes flew open. She dozed off in the chair, still holding his hand. His fingers squeezed hers, barely, but definitely. "Mr. Morrison." "Richard?" His eyes fluttered. Opened slightly. Confused, disoriented, but aware. "You're safe," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "You're in the hospital. You're going to be okay." Richard Morrison survived that night. And the next. And the one after that. As his strength returned, so did his story. He told Sarah everything, about the illness that bankrupted him, the isolation that followed, the shame that kept him from reaching out to former colleagues. About the daily battle to stay human when the world treated you as invisible. But Sarah wasn't the only one listening. A social worker got involved. Then a journalist. Richard's former students, now adults, read the story and came forward. They remembered Mr. Morrison. The teacher who stayed late to tutor struggling students. Who paid for class supplies out of his own pocket. Who believed in them when no one else did. Within weeks, a GoFundMe campaign raised enough money to get Richard into stable housing. Former students offered job references. The community that had ignored him on the street now rallied around him. But Richard always said the real miracle happened the moment Sarah bent down to pick up a wet ID card. "She saw me," he told reporters. "When I was invisible to everyone else, she saw me." This is the truth that Richard Morrison's story teaches us: every person you pass on the street has a name. A history. A story of how they got there, and a dream of how they might escape. We live in a world that's easy to navigate with blinders on. It's easier not to see the suffering around us. Easier to assume someone else will help. Easier to tell ourselves that one person can't make a difference. But Sarah Chin proves otherwise. One small act. One moment of attention. One decision to see the humanity in another person, that's all it took to save a life. Richard Morrison was a teacher for 32 years. But perhaps his greatest lesson was taught from a hospital bed: that dignity is not lost when we fall, it's only lost when others refuse to help us stand again. So, here's my challenge to you today: look up. See the people around you. Not just their circumstances, but their humanity. That person on the corner. They have a name. That person asking for help. They have a story. That person everyone ignores. They might have once been someone's teacher. Someone's hero. Someone's hope. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one meant to see them today. Share this story. Let it remind us of all that compassion costs nothing but means everything. That every human being deserves to be seen. To be valued. To be remembered. Because we're all one catastrophe, one illness, one stroke of bad luck away from needing someone to bend down and pick up our fallen ID card. Be that someone. See the invisible. Remember the forgotten. And never underestimate the power of one small act of kindness. If this story touched you, share it. Pass it on. And the next time you see someone in need, don't look away. Be the Sarah in someone's story. Be the light that reminds them they still matter. Richard Morrison continues to live independently and volunteers at a literacy center, teaching reading to adults. Sarah Chen and Richard remain close friends. She still has his commendation framed on her wall, a reminder that we never know whose life we might change. What will you do today to see the invisible? Share this story. Spread kindness. Change a life.